It's the year 2000. Europe is thriving economically, basking in a time of technological advancement and industrial success. Among the world's top 100 companies, 41 are European. Nearly half of the companies leading global markets were born and based on European soil. These companies were recognized globally, trusted, and envied. They drove Europe's economy, created millions of jobs, and reinforced Europe's status as an economic powerhouse. But today, that picture has changed. Out of those top 100 global giants, only 15 are European. What happened? Over the past 2 decades, European companies have been slipping from the list year by year. This isn't a case of a few businesses failing or a slight dip in growth. It's a steady decline that feels like Europe's economic heartbeat fading. Even more troubling, the remaining companies are in sectors that are stuck in time. Industries like oil, gas, and traditional car manufacturing dominate. But oil and gas, while still massive today, are transforming. The global movement towards sustainable energy is reshaping these sectors at a dizzying pace. Electric vehicles, solar energy, and wind power are shaping our future, not fossil fuels. In car manufacturing, competition is fiercer than ever, much of it from tech-driven companies outside Europe. European car makers lag behind companies like Tesla, which continually advances tech and redefines what a car can be. The competition is global and driven by cutting-edge technology and large R&D budgets. And where is Europe in the tech sector? Shockingly, Europe doesn't have a single big tech company to rival giants like Amazon, Apple, or Meta. These companies dominate markets and daily life, controlling data networks and driving innovation that powers economic growth. Europe is largely absent here. Nokia, once a mobile phone leader, has faded, and Europe's other tech ventures haven't kept up. So, what does this mean for Europe's future? It paints a picture of a continent that could be slipping from global leadership, from a key player in the world economy to something almost obsolete. To understand Europe's economic decline, we need to rewind a few centuries. Imagine Europe in the 1700s, before factories, steam engines, or large-scale mechanization existed. Back then, economies across continents weren't so different. Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America were nearly on par economically. At that time, Asia, especially China and India, made up half the world's economy. They had double the economic influence they hold today, and Europe wasn't yet the industrial powerhouse we think of. But then, something transformative happened. The Industrial Revolution, a period that changed Europe and the world. Europe went from workshops and small businesses to massive, mechanized factories that could produce goods faster, better, and at a scale unseen before. Machines, steam engines, and new tools transformed European businesses, bringing speed, growth, wealth, and a new economic order. As Europe industrialized, its economy took off, leaving the world behind. Innovation became Europe's economic engine, sparking inventions and technologies that built on each other. Wealth poured in, cities grew, and Europe's economy became unstoppable. With new wealth and power came a stronger military. European countries could now project power in ways others couldn't. This was the start of European colonialism. With economic and military advantages, European powers expanded, colonizing vast parts of Asia, Africa, and beyond. But here's an important point. Europe didn't get rich because of colonialism. Rather, Europe grew wealthy first, giving it the strength to colonize. Colonization, in turn, boosted Europe's wealth, creating a cycle that let Europe pull ahead as other regions fell behind. For over a century, Europe was a symbol of economic and military power, its influence stretching across continents. This growth continued until a seismic shift after World War II. The post-war period brought waves of independence movements across former European colonies, who fought for and regained control of their resources and economies. Gradually, newly independent countries grew economically, while Europe's share of world wealth began to slip. Initially, the decline was slow, almost unnoticeable, but over time, it accelerated. In the 1960s, Europe made up more than a third of the global economy. Today that share has fallen to less than 15%. This shift signals a new global economic order, with Europe's dominance giving way to rising powers across Asia and North America. Despite historical advantages, Europe has gone from leading the world's economy to watching its share get smaller year by year. Europe's economic standing tells part of the story, but individual companies reveal where things stand today. Let's look at some data to see just how deep this decline goes, and the numbers are eye-opening. Starting with banking in the US, JP Morgan, the largest bank, saw steady 10% revenue growth over the past 12 years. It's no surprise. They're innovative, resilient, and quick to seize opportunities. Now compare that to BNP Paribas, Europe's largest bank, which saw an 8% revenue drop in the same period. Deutsche Bank, Germany's banking giant, saw revenue shrink by over 40%. Think about that. JP Morgan is advancing, BNP Paribas is slipping, and Deutsche Bank is in freefall. This isn't just a dip, it's a pattern, showing something systemic. The pattern continues outside banking. In retail, Walmart, the American retail behemoth, saw revenue surge by 40% since 2009. Carrefour, one of Europe's biggest retail players, saw revenue drop by 28% over the same period. Walmart is sprinting ahead while Carrefour struggles to keep up. It's as if European companies are moving in reverse while global competitors surge forward. In sportswear since 2010, Nike's revenue nearly tripled, innovating and connecting with customers globally. Adidas, Europe's leading sportswear brand, grew by just over 50% in the same period. Nike is setting the pace and Adidas is trying to keep up, but the gap keeps growing. Perhaps the starkest example of Europe's lagging performance is in tech. Take Apple. Over the last decade, Apple's revenue grew nearly 600% through continuous innovation. Even more dramatic, China's biggest tech company, Alibaba, grew by 1,300%. Europe's largest tech company, SAP, grew by just 100%. While 100% growth sounds impressive compared to global trends, SAP's growth feels modest, even stagnant. And here's the kicker. SAP's revenue is 10 times smaller than Apple's, meaning that after decades, it still can't keep up with its global counterparts. This trend isn't about isolated cases. Sector by sector, company by company, the story repeats. US and Chinese corporations are not only growing, they're growing fast, taking risks, pushing boundaries, and dominating emerging sectors. Meanwhile, their European counterparts are lagging, growing slowly, or seeing revenue decline. The difference is stark and points to a deeper issue. We've seen Europe's decline in global rankings and company performance, but what's really behind this? Structural weaknesses are holding Europe back. These aren't just obstacles, they're deep-seated problems affecting nearly every part of Europe's economy. First, look at Europe's top companies. Unlike the United States, where tech and retail giants drive future growth, Europe's top 10 companies are mainly in oil, gas, and car manufacturing. We're talking about big names like Shell, BP, and major car manufacturers. These industries were booming in the 20th century, but times have changed. The world is moving towards sustainable energy with electric cars, renewable power, and a push to reduce fossil fuel use. This global shift directly threatens Europe's key sectors. Shell and BP may be household names, but their future is uncertain. Oil and gas face massive transformations with demand expected to decline as renewables become standard. Even in the car industry, where Europe has long led, competition is heating up from companies pushing electric vehicle technology. Tesla has revolutionized the market, and companies from Asia are aggressively expanding in this space. Meanwhile, European car makers are playing catch-up. The industries Europe relied on for so long are losing steam and won't drive the economy forward in coming decades. Even more alarming, while the United States and China lead in emerging sectors like tech, Europe has produced almost no big tech companies to replace its legacy giants. SAP, the only European tech company in the Fortune 500, has been around for over 50 years. Spotify, one of Europe's few tech successes, is still miles from competing at the scale of giants like Amazon, Google, or Tencent. Europe's lack of presence in tech, a fast-growing profitable industry, is a serious disadvantage. It's like missing out on the future altogether, as other countries surge ahead in fields like AI, software, and digital platforms. The structural issues don't stop there. Europe's economy is also weighed down by high regulation. Regulation can be good. It protects people, the environment, and society. Europe is known globally as a regulatory powerhouse, often regulating industries that others address much later. Europe's data privacy laws, for example, set global standards with laws like GDPR. But too much regulation can also hold back innovation. Excessive rules can stifle growth, discourage investment, and make it harder for companies to adapt. In recent decades, Europe has been regulating more, creating barriers that are hard for businesses to overcome. Imagine starting a tech company in Europe. You face layers of regulations, with each country having its own rules. Even though most of Europe is in the EU, it's not as unified as it seems. Every time a business expands from one European country to another, it encounters new regulations, permits, and licenses. Europe is more like 28 separate markets than a single, cohesive one. This fragmentation makes it harder for European companies to scale quickly. something companies in the United States or China can do with ease. This issue doesn't just slow companies down, it keeps them small. Instead of competing across Europe or globally, many European companies focus on domestic markets. With smaller target markets, they don't feel the pressure to innovate, expand, or compete at the level seen from United States and Chinese companies. In the United States, for example, businesses can expand across all 50 states without a new set of rules every time they cross a border. In China, a single massive market encourages competition and rapid growth. Europe's regulatory maze, however, keeps its companies fragmented, limiting their growth and competitiveness on the world stage. After everything we've seen, the decline of European companies, historical shifts, struggles in performance, and deep structural weaknesses, what does this mean for Europe's future? The implications are huge for Europe and the global economy. Europe's next steps could decide whether it remains a world power or fades into economic irrelevance. Europe has relied on its historical achievements, welfare states, high quality of life, and strong social safety nets. Many European countries are known for generous healthcare, pensions, and education, creating security and stability. But here's the catch. These achievements were built on past economic success. As Europe's share of the global economy shrinks, it's unclear how sustainable these systems will be. As Europe's economy slows, tax revenue needed for these programs dries up. Without growth, funding healthcare, education, and pensions at the same level becomes harder. An aging population adds pressure, with fewer young people entering the workforce. The question isn't just about growth, it's about whether Europe can afford its quality of life. Without change, Europe may face tough choices about its welfare state, social services, and global role. Then there's innovation. The world is evolving faster than ever, with technology reshaping every industry. Economies leading in technology like the United States and China aren't just growing GDP, they're creating new industries, controlling the future of AI, data, green energy, and more. Europe, however, is barely part of this tech-driven future. Without tech leadership, Europe risks missing out on the industries that will drive global growth. Europe could end up buying software, data, and green technologies from abroad, becoming more of a consumer than a producer. This isn't just about the economy, it's about influence. Tech power means control over policy, standards, and culture. Companies leading in AI, social media, and e-commerce influence everything from privacy standards to information flow. Right now, this power rests largely with the United States and increasingly with China. If Europe doesn't change, it risks losing its voice in shaping the rules of the future. Power dynamics may shift, leaving Europe without its former influence. Culturally, the impact is profound. Europe has a legacy of innovation, art, science, and thought leadership. But as the world moves forward, Europe risks being seen as a place of the past, a kind of old world that's culturally significant but economically outdated. Imagine Europe as a kind of museum, respected for its history but increasingly irrelevant to the future. Europe has a choice to make. To stay competitive, Europe will need bold changes. This could mean rethinking regulations and market fragmentation holding it back, creating incentives for tech and innovation, and unifying markets more fully. Without these changes, Europe may continue to fall behind in the global economy.